Good evening and welcome, everyone. This is Luke Gran. I'm a staff member from Practical Farmers of Iowa, and we are very glad to have you all joining us tonight to learn from farmers about profitable meat opportunities for selling products right off the farm directly to consumers. And I wanted to back up these slides a couple. There we go. Wanted to say thank you, welcome to all, and thank you for being here. We've been doing these for about 3 years now, and we've got recorded over 50 Farminars, 90-minute sessions with farmers as the experts, farmers sharing what they know with others. And please, we want you to be active participants, so please share questions and whatnot in the chat box on the left there. I want to give a little outline of what we're going to do tonight, and as also mentioned, some upcoming opportunities with Practical Farmers of Iowa to put on your calendars. And then we'll get right to it very, very shortly. So first thing, outside of the Farminar, Practical Farmers of Iowa is a nonprofit organization that cares about your success and wants to network you with others who are successful, and they want to share their experiences with you so you can learn from them and you can learn from each other, really. We have a bunch of great programming to help you, ranging from our Cooperators program, which is an on-farm research program, where farmers choose the research questions and do the tests on their farms so they can understand a new practice or a new technique and see if it really makes a difference on their farm. We can help with the testing of that and sharing the data around the state. So that's the Cooperators program, farmer-led research. Some other great programs are the Savings Incentive Program. I see many Savings Incentive Program folks in the audience tonight. Looks like Drew is here from Northwest Iowa. He's in the Savings Incentive Program. And Jay Young is in the Savings Incentive Program from North Central Iowa. Who else am I missing? Lindsay and Luke are also in the Savings Incentive Program. Excellent. So welcome to all of you. And what is the Savings Incentive Program? That's a great question. What would you say to a dollar-for-dollar match to your savings and help with matching with a mentor, farmer who cares about your success and wants to share everything they've learned and their experience? And what else is in the Savings Incentive Program? Opportunities to network with beginning farmers, like at this event. All these things and more help you over 2 years to save $2,400 for your farm, and Practical Farms of Iowa will match your savings dollar for dollar. So you can put that money towards a piece of land, some equipment, things to help your farm improve your farm success. That's the Savings Incentive Program offered by Practical Farmers of Iowa. Applications are accepted in the fall of the year, and we hope you apply if you're not already a participant in that program. A couple other things to mention is the Next Generation Retreat coming up at the end of the month. We have some great face-to-face meetings, like our annual conference and our Cooperators program meeting, as well as the annual Next Generation Retreat. That's a great opportunity to get involved, meet up with other beginning farmers on the 30th and through the 1st of December. 30th of November to the 1st of December. So if you're interested, the sign-up deadline is the 15th of November. So it's just this week, and it's just $10 for members of Practical Farmers of Iowa to get together and learn with other beginners about how to access land, how to use cover crops, how to plan your vision for your farm and share your ideas with others so they can test your hypothesis and offer some feedback for your dreams and plans. Anywho, enough from me. I just wanted to say you're very welcome to be here tonight, and please continue to use Practical Farmers of Iowa programs to improve your life, improve your farms, like so many have now, coming up on 30 years in operation, Practical Farmers of Iowa. Very well. Let's begin tonight. We've got Terri Lawton and Cheryl Hopkins. We're going to start with Terri for some introductions, then Cheryl for some introductions, and then back to Terri, who's going to lead us in our discussion answering some learning outcomes provided by Cheryl. So Terri, do you want to begin?
Sure. Let's just transfer, I guess, to my slideshow.
Gotcha.
Awesome. So, like the slide says, my name's Terri Lawton. I grew up on a very old farm, and let's see. Am I in control now, Luke? Oh yeah, I am. Okay, so basically, I love cows. I grew up on a dairy farm and used to spend a lot of time hanging out with the cows. I can remember like sitting in the field and drawing pictures of cows when I was a kid. And when I was getting ready to graduate high school, my parents, I wanted to take over the farm, and my parents required that I go to college, even though it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. So I agreed to do this associate's degree in production agriculture, and ended up in Sterling, Colorado, and I specialized in feedlot management because it was focused a lot on nutrition and how to take care of cows. It was the most applicable to dairy. After I was there for a year, I decided I really liked college, loved learning about agriculture, liked learning about cows and how they work. A little bit of the management, I had gotten a little bit of the management side, but mostly at Purdue University is where I got into the farm management, like let's analyze businesses and see where their strengths and weaknesses are, opportunities and threats, and go from there. I also did an internship at a beef ranch. They had Charolais and commercial cows while I was out there as well. My work experience, this is kind of my most recent thing first, the owner and manager of a successful startup business. I think that I was in my fourth year of farming before I learned that most farms aren't profitable in their first few years of business. And I think that because I was very concerned about running my business well from the beginning, that would happen that way. Before I got into the dairy, right after college I was a dairy inspector with the Department of Agriculture in Massachusetts. It was a very intense job, and we had to learn a lot. I knew a lot about regulations and cleanliness and how different things affected food safety, especially. When I was at Purdue, I took a lot of food safety classes. I could have had a minor in food safety, but I didn't want to take like one more class. Anyways, so at this point, I've been doing a lot of consulting, speaking to groups about farming. I've been very active in Farm Bureau. One of the things I've done most recently is participate in the Partners in Agricultural Leadership program, which was an incredible program which helped me become a better leader, manager, speaker, advocate, just a much stronger professional. I'm also a NOFA Mass member, and I've presented at NOFA conferences. I'll be presenting, co-presenting a workshop this winter at their winter conference. And I'm rumored to be writing a book about my first 5 years of farming. I kind of threw this in. Luke had asked me about how my book was coming, and I feel like I never have a chance to work on it. And I'm also very interested in farmland preservation, which in Massachusetts is a big issue because you're looking at to buy 50 acres. If you can get it for less than $1 million, you're doing pretty good. So. At the farm, this is what we did. The environment that we're in, it's a very old farm that's been in the family for a very long time, and by the nature of family succession, when every generation you're thinking that there was heirs and the property had to be split between the heirs. So now we're left with these 25 acres, and what do you do with that? How do you return to the farm and be profitable? I have a picture here of, this is actually our view of the Gillette Stadium, excuse me, where the Patriots play. You can kind of see the stadium lights up here. So, and this is our cow field in the lower part. And this older picture is this is my grandfather with his first cow in 1938, his first Guernsey cow. And then this is all of his brothers and sisters and father, I believe this one on the far right is. And then this is a couple years ago at our farm. You know, we went from being a very production-oriented farm to being mostly retail-oriented. So when I wanted to go back to farm, I really looked at what do I have available. I had an expertise in dairy, retail raw milk sales, some experience with processing of raw milk into cheeses, you know, especially in terms of the regulatory side of that. I had been to a lot of farms that sold raw milk as an inspector. There was when I was an inspector, I had about 100 farms in my territory, and there was about 6 of them that were licensed to sell raw milk retail, which is something that's allowed in Massachusetts at the farm. So I love cows, and that's what I wanted to do. But if you can figure 25 cows or 25 acres, you know, can you really fit more than 25 cows on 25 acres? Probably not. Can 25 cows provide an income? Can I spend enough? Well, I know I can spend enough time taking care of those cows, but can I earn enough income for my time? I also had developed a business plan at Purdue as part of the farm management classes of which I took, where I developed an on-farm cheese-making business model, which I wanted to implement. And I thought that was the solution. And then I found out about the raw milk, and we went that route first because it provided a little bit more financial stability while we transitioned to cheese. So to do raw milk, I'll talk a little bit about that. Cleanliness is so essential. Food safety is our top priority, followed closely by cow comfort. Basically, and when I train people to milk, you know, I tell them babies are drinking this milk. So you want to be that clean before you put a milking machine on these cows. You know, the milk is tested routinely. We have this label. All these things are required that that it's not pasteurized. Pasteurization destroys organisms that can be harmful to human health. So it's controversial. It's something that I thought that I could do well, and we've done very well with our bacteria counts, cow health, all that sort of thing. Marketing, like I said, we started with the raw milk. We did our marketing before we did our product development. You know, before I said, okay, I'm going to sell raw milk, or I'm going to sell eggs or cheese or whatever, I talked to people that would be our customers and asked if they could buy a product from Foxborough, for like raw milk or whatever. What would they want it to be like? And that's where we started with the grass-fed model. So I started just with selling milk. I sold it, you know, pre-order, so people would email in their order, and I would fill that order for that particular day that they wanted. Then I had customers asking for eggs, so I looked around at some other farmers that had chickens, and we started doing eggs. And likewise for the cheese and the beef, the chickens, turkeys. One thing that I didn't have too many people ask for veal, but I provided it because it was something that we wanted to do. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later, because I use it as a kind of an example to answer some of the learning objectives that we have for tonight. So just to get an idea of the thinking behind the products that we offered, we didn't just go in and say, I'm going to make raw milk for retail sales and everybody's going to come and buy it. You know, that's not the way it worked. Every single one of these bottles has a cost, and I don't want to spend that money on that bottle unless I know it's going to be sold. So marketing, we talk more about marketing. Marketing is so hard, but it's so essential. It really needs to be the first thing, I believe, as we do. I didn't do I didn't do anything other than word of mouth advertising for about 3 years. Maybe that's a little bit. It might have been only 2, but I didn't even have a website. I did have a Yahoo group before there was Constant Contact, which would have done about the same thing. But my goal was to develop a relationship with all of my customers, and honesty was so important to me because I didn't want to be like some other farm or the grocery store or something where, you know, things might not be clearly labeled as whether they're organic or whether they're this or that. So basically, our program is that we feed our cows grass with oats as a reward for coming in the barn at milking time. We try to pasture as much as possible, considering what's appropriate for the environment. You know, for an example, during you know, really muddy times, we won't put the cows out on pasture. We'll put them in a sacrifice field or something like that. And so explaining a lot of those practices to people. You know, I had people who would ask me, like on March 1st, when, you know, the sun first starts getting a little warm, why I don't have the cows out in pasture. And so I had to like explain, gee, you know, there really isn't anything for them to eat out there right now, and you know, go into that sort of thing. And following that, we did the open houses, which we found were very essential for marketing. And they're hard. We had to do a lot of preparation, and no one in our family really wanted to do an open house because we're kind of private people, and you know, we like to just do our work and hang out with the cows and, you know, and do our thing, but we had to get over that in order to work with that. So the next thing, you know, going into the cheese operation, we made these cheeses. It did become my parents' project, mostly because I wasn't able to finance what we needed. We needed about $100,000 to get started, and I wasn't able to get a loan because I didn't have enough collateral. I didn't have enough lending history. The fromage blanc, I had customers that were making cheese. One of the customers had the most incredible cheese I ever tasted, and I was able to get her recipe. And so the fromage blanc that we make is pretty much the same thing as what she gave us. And then the Asiago, we wanted a hard cheese that nobody else was doing, and Peter Dixon, he's a cheesemaker in Vermont, consultant, you know, very active in the cheese making industry, and he gave us, I mean, he helped us develop this recipe, and that was also partly funded with the help of Massachusetts Department of Agriculture. Has an ag viability program, which is a grant which we received to develop that. So just to give you an idea of where we came from, this is when we started. This is pretty much what the barn looked like. I actually had taken down the insulation and ceiling here. So this wasn't really a true beginning, but this is basically what we started with, and this is about what we finished with. This is Josh. He's an intern that we had from Framingham State, and Maggie is a cheese helper. So anyways, it did take a long time, and part of that was because we were using mostly our own labor and then a lot of our own cash. We tried to use as much of our own cash as possible. So farmers markets, again, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later with Cheryl, but it's our main venue for cheese sales. And last summer we were at more than 21 farmers markets in the eastern Massachusetts area. We're planning this winter to be at 12. We have a crew of people that take stuff out. We sell cheese, beef, and veal at the farmers markets. So it depends on every market is different. Some want beef, some want just veal, some want cheese, everything. We also sell some eggs at farmers markets, but it's not our big thing. The main thing that we try to sell at the farmers markets is the cheese. So this is something that's a little bit difficult to talk about, but I think that it's important because the Foxborough Cheese Company wasn't financially sustainable by itself. I ended up selling the raw milk, beef, and veal businesses to my parents last winter, so that way the whole thing, the whole farm business as a whole is enough probably to support one couple, but certainly not two. And unfortunately, I think that the reason why that is that I didn't see it in my business plan, but there's a significant amount of labor to making cheese and marketing farm products, and I didn't compensate for that in my business plan, the amount of money it would cost to pay for that labor. So since that time, I have been giving more of my time to my family and to helping other farmers become more profitable by doing things like this, and then also working on my book. And then I have my website, this Terri Lawton at .wordpress.com. So, and I think that we'll probably do questions later or something like that. Luke, maybe you can talk about that.
That's right. Excellent. Well, we'll switch to the introduction of Cheryl, and then we'll go to the learning outcomes, and we'll have questions at the end. All right, Cheryl, you can turn on your mic and tell us your story. The microphone button is at the top, the little icon, and then there's a little thing that pops up that says allow or deny. You want to choose allow.
Okay, sorry about that, Luke. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Like Luke said, my name's Cheryl Hopkins. My husband and I operate Frog Hollow Farm, and we're located in east central Iowa near the small town of Walker. So I have a map up here to show Walker's located right over here. We're about midway between Waterloo and Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which are two major cities here in Iowa. We have a pretty modest farm, just 30 acres, and it consists mainly of pasture for livestock. We started a new orchard, and we also do vegetable gardening as well. We went back to farming because we really wanted to do what we enjoy most. Both my husband and I love agriculture, and we really, loved living in Iowa. And so we wanted to have a lifestyle that was more consistent with kind of our beliefs and values. We both grew up around farming and working with livestock. So we decided to kind of put our knowledge and ability to work, raising meat and producing it in a sustainable way that's good for the environment and respectful of animals, and be profitable as well. So this is me out with our goats. The goats are the main part of our operation. I have a degree in animal science from Iowa State University, and my emphasis was in nutrition, breeding and genetics, and reproductive physiology. And then over the last 25 years, I have, accumulated experience in farming and livestock nutrition. I also have a bit of job history working in grocery retail and wholesale distribution. In addition to that, I grew up, just farming and working with livestock. We used to, when I was growing up, we raised bucket calves for beef, and we had a farrow to finish operation. And after college, I went to work for a livestock nutrition company in Cedar Rapids, and I've worked there for 15 years. Part of that was actually in research and development, doing applied nutrition studies with sheep, hogs, poultry, and cattle for the feed company. This is my husband holding a baby goat, and those are some nieces and nephews that were over visiting. My husband also grew up around farming and has a real passion for animals and nature. He grew up in rural Iowa and had all the usual experiences growing up in rural Iowa. He did, considerable work with beef cattle, hogs, and poultry. He even raised pheasants, and of course forage production, which is a nice way of talking about putting up hay. In addition, Mike has a real strong background in construction and mechanics. He's actually built both the barns on our farm. When we moved onto our farm, there were no buildings there, so we had to, the first year right away, build a pole barn, and then recently we added a hoop barn for hay storage. But Mike has also constructed from scratch a chicken coop. He's done all the fencing. When we moved onto the farm, there was no fencing, and he's just a real handyman, building all kinds of things like inline fence feeders and lots of other useful items. All of our kids are actually grown, but they still come out and help us with the farm. Everybody has fond memories of growing up or visiting the farm. And then also the grandkids and nieces and nephews really enjoy spending time on the farm, learning about animals and nature. And we really appreciate being able to pass that on to the next generation and enabling them to have those experiences. The first 5 years on our farm, we really focused on setting up basic facilities, creating that infrastructure. Like I said, when we moved onto the farm, there was no fencing, there were no buildings, and so we started from scratch. Now with the farm, most of the basic infrastructure is there. We've got the fencing up, we've got buildings for livestock and hay storage now. So our next steps, I think, are to really ramp up our operations. We're exploring ways to expand and diversify to help improve profitability. Like Terri mentioned, the first few years weren't very profitable. Both of my husband and I have off-farm jobs as well, and so it's like both of us having 2 full-time jobs each, and we're getting to the point on our farm where it needs to become more than just a hobby. It needs to become a truly profitable business. So our goal is to expand it to where where we could possibly, farm full time, both of us. At Frog Hollow, we would think it's sustainable and humane to give animals healthy living conditions and low-stress lives. We kind of joke about this picture here. The goats are out basking in the warm winter sun, and we wonder if the goats think that this is an ugly goat, or do the horses think this is an ugly horse? We rely primarily on forages. Here's a nice green picture, not from last summer, but from the summer before. Our goats spend most of their time out on pasture. We do feed a small amount of grain just for optimum growth and health in the kids. But we use no growth-promoting antibiotics, no growth hormones, and no animal byproducts in our feeds. So we do our own ration balancing. The kids grow up in the open pasture with fresh air, where they're content and healthy, and our mission is to raise the livestock in an environmentally conscientious way that's respectful of the animals and of nature. Our goat herd started out with 5 head of goats, and right now we're up to about 50 head of breeding does and a couple of bucks. And we have a livestock guardian dog to help keep everybody safe. And our plans are to triple our numbers in the next year or so. Right now in the wintertime, the goats are housed in a steel pole barn. And the pastures and paddocks are all kind of in different stages of planning. We've got main perimeter fences up, and now we're developing plans on how to do rotational grazing and being able to move livestock around and have shelter and water supply. The small orchard that we've planted includes apple, pear, apricot, cherry, and plum trees. It's kind of a micro orchard, and it hasn't started producing yet. And this last summer, with the drought, it was really hard on things. We did a lot of watering to keep things alive. But then we also got hit by the Japanese beetles and then later the leafhoppers. So we're not sure how the orchard's going to fare. We're keeping an eye on that. The garden is, right now we have about 1/4 of an acre more or less in garden, and we've got room to expand there too. In August of last year, we started selling retail cuts of goat meat through the Iowa Valley Food Cooperative in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. This is kind of like an online farmer's market. We were an active member of the Iowa Valley Food Co-op since the first producer and consumer surveys, and over the last couple of years, Mike and I have served on the Iowa Valley Food Co-op Steering Committee and also on the Producer Care Committee. So I was part of developing the producer requirements to join the co-op and outlining all the local and state license requirements for the producer members to sell through the co-op. I'm currently a member of PFI, and I'm also a Savings Incentive Program participant, and I want to thank Terri for sharing her knowledge with us. This information will be very useful in developing our business plan through the SIP program. And one last picture. Here's Doc, the guardian dog. So I guess that's basically it, Luke. I can turn it back over to Terri.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. Trying to figure out how to unmute my microphone. Um, so we talked a lot about the different learning objectives, and I think trying to tie things in an umbrella. Everything that we talked about ties into how to be a profitable direct-to-consumer farmer. Which again, like we talked about, isn't necessarily something that's easy. But I think that if we focus on these keys to profitability, which the things that we're going to talk about tonight mostly work with these first two, that will help us be profitable, whether it's day to day or in the long run, which of course profitability equals sustainability, because if we can't be profitable, we're not going to be able to keep farming. So maximizing the use of the available resources that we have, and then measuring the productivity, whether it's profit per acre, profit per cow, volume of milk per cow, sales per customer. These are things that we want to know, we want to be able to measure, we want to be able to talk about and set goals about how to make it better. So one of the first questions you asked, or that we talked about, was how do we select the types of products that we sell? What I did, Cheryl, was I looked at my opportunities. What is it I'm passionate about? What is it that I want to do? I love cows. What am I an expert at? I was a dairy inspector. I'm an expert at food safety. I've been to, hundreds of farms and saw the nitty-gritty, where the dirty places are, and I know how to troubleshoot those things. So what were my assets? I had some cows. My market opportunities being in this greater Boston area. I happen to be the closest dairy farm to Boston, and not quite Providence, but very close to Providence. We're about halfway in between Providence and Boston. And the other thing when you decide what to sell is you need to be able to be honest with yourself. Do you like people? Can you be patient? Can you be fairly articulate? Can you be neat? These are things that you really need to think very honestly about, because, if you're not very patient, if you don't like talking to people, and if you really don't like being clean, you're probably not going to want to do the direct marketing route. I think it just might not be as easy. So we can do an example of that. Oh yeah, this is my cow slide. Here's some of our vealers. This is a nice little heifer, but you can't really tell it's a heifer or a bull. So the veal. This is a really good example of how we decided to sell veal. I had been getting about $100 a calf, and then prices collapsed, and I started getting $20, and then it went to $5, and how can something be worth $100 one day and then $5 the next day, or several months apart? And anyways, so we were thinking, veal in the store, you get $20 a pound. How can we get that? I mean, why should we be selling our calves for $5 each when clearly there needs to be value there? There is value there. So we looked at, is anyone else doing it? How are they doing it? I went to a couple farms that were doing this and asked a bunch of questions, and thought, how could I do it a little bit differently or a little bit better than what other people are doing? What would it cost? That's especially important to talk to other farmers and find out what it costs them. Now, I did find for me, Cheryl, that what other people told me it cost them, it always costs me a little bit more, and I don't know why that worked out that way. But again, going back to what do I already have? What are my assets already? You know, I had this piece of ground here that was fenced in, a little bit of a lot. I had, you know, fencing equipment, solar charger. I had the bull calves, and I was already bringing animals to the slaughterhouse for beef. So that's what we did. And ground veal, which is what this is about a pound of ground veal. Actually, this is a little more than a pound. I'm getting $10 a pound. When I raise a 300-pound calf, which is about our goal, we get about 80 pounds of meat. Now, of course, there's cost with that, but so far it's been working out pretty well. Did you have any questions about that, Cheryl?
No, that sounds really good. From what you say is look at your strengths when in your background, or go out and, you know, if you're not already an expert in something, get the training or information or knowledge that you need to before you jump into it. And when selecting products, you know, look for ways that you can add value or get the most of the value out of it.
Exactly. And to tell you the truth, I know people who, like ground veal, right now I have too much ground veal. You know, we have so much ground veal, it's kind of silly. And, you know, I know we'll sell it, but I know other farmers that don't have as much market opportunity as we do. Will find other ways to sell it. For an example, stew meat, they'll make stew with it. You know, have either a chef come in, or, you know, some get connected with a certified kitchen and make a soup that they can freeze and then sell as a ready to heat product too.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea.
So how and where do we market our products? This is complicated, and I have a lot of beliefs about this. For our area where we're at, we're so close to the city. You know, farmers markets on the farm. Those are basically the two that we do anymore. I've done restaurants before, I've done retail stores before, I've never done online sales. Because we're so close to population centers and because we have so much traffic from the raw milk, we're able to do a lot of on-farm sales. Because the raw milk has to be sold on the farm. I have people that are driving 2 hours to come to the farm to get raw milk. And so while they're there, they'll, you know, get whatever else they need. Here's our farmers markets. This is our farmers market booth, which one of the challenges we've found, and we haven't figured out a way to overcome it yet with meat and cheese, they have to be refrigerated, and so you don't have a very fancy display like you would if you were doing vegetables it's colorful, it's big, it attracts attention. And this is a little bit more humble, if you will, you know, just with signs, and we usually put samples out and whatever. We found that samples really help, especially with the cheese. Again, you know, cleanliness is very important, presentation is very important, making things look neat. And most of this is very highly regulated as well by local boards of health. You know, you have to wear gloves, you can't touch the money and then touch the glove, or then touch this food or whatever. And it also, farmers markets require stuff, especially with meat. We're allowed to use coolers for some markets, And then for other markets, we have to use mechanical refrigeration. And so we use these small freezers, and you can see they're on rollers or whatever. So we can actually roll them. We actually put a wheelchair lift in the back of a van. And so we put each cooler, or excuse me, each refrigerator or freezer in the wheelchair lift and lift it up into the van and roll it in. And it stays cold on the way to the market, but every Board of Health for us is a little different, and in Massachusetts every Board of Health requires a permit, which is a lot of permits. and they have different rules. Every municipality has different rules, and so I don't know exactly what Iowa does, but I know in Rhode Island, for an example, you just get one permit from the state and you can go to any market, which is a lot nicer than how it is in Massachusetts. So we're actually working with the Farm Bureau to try to get more consistent, reasonable regulations with the boards of health, and that's an ongoing thing. Costs, again, knowing our costs, very important. We figure that it costs about $150 per day per market, and that includes transportation, labor, insurance, market fees, local licensing, all the supplies, etc. Of course, labor is usually the most expensive piece. And then some of the markets are requiring a $2 million umbrella policy, including naming them as an insured, an additional insured on the policy, which is cumbersome. It's expensive, but it's part of the cost of marketing. If we don't do it, where are we going to sell our product? And we actually are able to keep a lot more money by doing it this way than if we were selling wholesale to markets or through a distributor. We've worked through a distributor before, and it's just not, we don't have much control over it, and we wanted to have more control, and we wanted to be able to say, well, this market isn't making us money, so we're not going to do it anymore, that sort of thing. Let's see. So the other thing that we primarily do is the on-farm marketing. One of the big challenges with this is who holds down the fort, who's there collecting the money, running a register. In our situation, this is my register. I have a sign-in book where people sign in, write what they've bought, and then leave the money in the cash box. And I figure that it would cost me at least $10 an hour for about 8 hours a day, because that's what we're open. So if, because people say, oh, well, what if someone steals from you and everything like that? And I figure if they don't steal more than $80 worth of stuff per day, I'm ahead. Our location is really ideal in a lot of ways. We're at the intersection of two major highways, Route 95 and Route 495, Boston, New Hampshire, the Cape Cod, Providence. These are major major populations that we're really very central to. And the farm has to be compelling. For us, it's been the raw milk, the grass-fed raw milk. Nobody really does that near us. They're, in order to do it, if you were to get another, or to go to a farm that sells grass-fed raw milk, you'd have to go about an hour and a half west of us. So that's what makes our farm compelling. And then I think there also is the aspect of having the really old farm and, that piece. But I don't know if people would drive 2 hours just to support a really old farm. I think that, that's where you're going to have to make a lot of choices, because I think in Iowa you have a lot of challenges that we don't necessarily have. And that's where maybe wholesale would make more sense in Iowa. Maybe online sales would make more sense. We don't do that because we can sell everything that we can produce on our farm or at the farmers markets. And we're trying to capture more dollars and spend less money. So, William and Stacy asked, what challenges do you mean? I assume that's in terms of marketing. Well, if like my town, my Foxborough, where we're located, we have 17,000 people living in town, and it's a small town for the area. So if you have 5,000, 15,000, that's a lot less. You know, that's a lot less people, and so maybe you're going to have to go further somehow, whether it's wholesaling or whether it's online sales, to be able to capture more dollars. Yeah, Luke, it's 25. I'm milking about 24 cows totally. I probably have 3 dry cows and too many heifers. So, as far as marketing, we like to get as much bang for our buck, and that's why we do a lot with the website and Facebook. Print advertising, I don't do any. I can't see why. If it costs money, I have a really hard time doing it because there's so many ways that we can do free advertising, whether it's through our website or writing a blog or writing a column for a paper or something like that. I feel like that print advertising should be like a last resort. All of my customers I get through the internet. And Todd asked, how many gallons of milk do I sell per week on the farm? And I'll have to think about that. I can't remember right now. We need to keep in mind our keys to profitability. How will this make me more money? And that equals keeping the farm alive. And that's why I said print advertising, you need to say, will it make you more money? It's really hard to tell. But will a website? Absolutely, and especially if you have a merchant account through it. We've never done it. We haven't had to. I've thought about it, and I think that would be definitely the way to go. Todd, the reason why it's hard for me to think about how many gallons, because we do half gallons. So probably we sell about 200 gallons per week. It's not a lot. So is certification necessary? I think that's the next question you had asked about.
Yeah, and I know this is different depending on where you're at. And I think as far as raw milk sales in Iowa, and others can jump in and correct me, I don't think we're allowed to sell
that's what I heard too.
Iowa.
Which I don't recommend doing it. If it's not legal, don't do it. We wouldn't sell raw milk if it was illegal. It's just not worth it.
We've considered other certifications like organic, animal welfare certifications.
I've considered both of those. And then I guess I've heard there's a certified naturally grown too. If you're going to sell wholesale, absolutely, it would probably have benefits. With direct marketing, because we're building relationships with our customers, we're telling our story. We're talking about the different things that we use, and when customers hear about different things, they're asking us, hey, what's the story with whatever? And so we can talk to them and explain the science behind different things. And so it's not real. It's probably not necessary for us. I don't think that it would make too much of a difference in terms of revenue or trust, but I think that it would make it easier to market. Like, I wouldn't have to explain to people, you know, what we do. If someone wanted to know about our production practices, I can say, well, we're certified organic, or we're certified animal welfare approved, or something like that. And you know, that kind of leads to my next point. Are we selling ourselves, our product? You know, we're selling ourselves. We're selling our story. We're selling our knowledge about farming. If you're wholesaling, then you're definitely selling your product and not as much your own story. And so that's where I think that the certification would probably be much more necessary. I did want to mention briefly the HSUS legislative efforts and pressures on big buyers. And I don't mind if there's a big difference between what I do and what other farmers do. Because if every dairy farmer in the United States had their cows pastured, I wouldn't be able to get $10 a gallon for my milk. And if every egg producer, if every egg that you looked at the store came from a farm where it wasn't in a cage or was free roaming, I wouldn't be able to get $5 or $6 a dozen. So I think that there's probably a place for more conventional or traditional forms of agriculture, and that's not what we're doing. We're doing direct marketing. We are specifically selling a grass-fed product, and that we have a big emphasis on humane treatment of animals, and that's what I'm providing. So, and we are listed on Eat Wild, Todd. And I'm also listed on the Weston A. Price Foundation website. I think it's called realmilk.com. Cheryl, did you have any questions about that?
Did you? Well, on the eatwild.com and the freerange.com, did you have to? You went out and signed up or listed your?
Yeah, and I actually think I might have had to pay for that too. Now, come to think of it, which I did because it's a big. I mean, Eat Wild is a big website. So. Tess asks about my pastures being stressed with that many cows per acre. It would be if I didn't manage it well. You know, we're very intensive rotational grazers, and I forgot to mention that our pasture is irrigated, and that makes a big difference. So it's not because I manage it well. So I rotate them, and then we also feed a lot of hay too. That's in the winter. We feed mostly hay. I would consider doing haylage, but we don't have the system for it. We get about we have about 70 acres of hay land that we rent around town, and then also I buy hay from central Massachusetts. And I don't keep any companion animals. We just have cows and cats at our farm. I don't know if that was for me or Cheryl.
And we have it all on our farm. We have goats, cats, and dogs, but we kind of figure everybody's working. Even the horses, they don't look like they're working, but we feel anyway that they do benefit a little bit with we have a pretty heavy coyote population, and we have not lost any goats to coyotes. So we think that all these things working together are beneficial. So that's my justification for the pasture ornament horses.
And James, how do I manage weeds? I mow them, and I've trained the cows to eat quite a few of things. And then the agritourism component, that's kind of what our open houses are. And I don't charge for that, though. And that's a personal preference. I mean, I'm probably a lot more production-oriented. I'm a little bit of a purist. I really struggle with the farms that have mini golf in front of, with a petting zoo. And I just don't think I could do that. I mean, I'm sure they make a lot of money. I'm sure it makes sense financially, but personally, I don't know if I would want to do that. And we don't also either have much extra land, like to do a corn maze or anything. So, Cheryl, you had asked about, deciding what to sell and keeping organized and, especially, trying to match customer demand with inventory. And that is a tough question, and it's a little bit complex. I have not figured it out exactly. After many seasons, I can kind of figure out what people want mostly. Now, you can see this is one of our freezers. This is mostly stuff that we take to the farmer's market. You have burger. Each row has a different thing in it, or excuse me, each shelf has a different item. So on the top is the hot dogs, and then the middle shelf looks like beef patties. And then this shelf here is for, on the bottom is ground beef, which is predominantly what we sell. Inventory management. Our butcher keeps saying he's going to provide an inventory report. He hasn't been able to yet. But you can see here's some of the ways that we keep things. Like here's all our steaks that are $20 a pound or more, and then here's different types of sausages, so that when they're packing for the market, they can take one or two of each thing. And then at different markets, like some markets, we wouldn't bring any steaks, and then others we mostly bring steaks, depending on what people are looking for. So again, you can see more inventory. We use small freezers. It seems like, for us that might be a better option, because when one gets emptied, we can unplug it and save some electricity. I know people that say walk-in freezers are much more efficient, and I've honestly never tested it. I know people who have, and who say that the chest freezers are better. I don't know. And you can see the ice over on the right-hand side here. We go through a lot of ice with the coolers and whatever. Todd asks about generalizing about my market demographics, and I honestly don't know. I usually think of them as highly educated, middle-class women, mothers. And we have USDA slaughterhouses, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Different products. This is a sausage that we tried knockwurst, and it does well. I get $12 a pound for that. This is another sausage that we've tried, and we try it. When we try it, we'll try like 20 to 30 pounds, and then see how it sells. This is liver. I can't keep liver in stock, and I'm getting more than $5 a pound for liver. Beef bones, veal bones, sweetbreads, sheep heads. I've sold a lot of stuff. So, and then I guess, Cheryl, did you have any questions about that inventory and trying to keep things stocked? I know basically what we do is, in the summer people want stuff to grill, and then in the winter people are more willing to do like roasts and bones and things to make stews and longer cooking meals.
Yeah, that's kind of, we've come up with some generalities like that, but some things are just totally
Well, and it's true. It's
unpredictable.
true. I mean, I can't tell you. I've had like veal breast, which is like kind of like a rib, and I had 6 of them, and I could never sell them. And then, of course, as soon as I finally got them all sold, I had people asking for them. You know. Right, exactly. And
for a while.
it's sometimes you just can't tell. And what I've told people, honestly, is I'll say, well, you know what, I can't get it for you right now, but if you want it, put a deposit on it, especially if it's a big item, like a rack or something like that. Put a deposit on it, and I'll have it for you in 4 weeks. And then I bring it to the butcher, bring an animal to the butcher if I have one ready, you know. But
And then by putting a deposit on it,
yeah, I don't.
buying it.
If something costs more than $10, I don't like to make a commitment to providing it without a deposit. Especially, like, you think turkeys, Thanksgiving turkeys, and you know, I'm asking for $50 deposits for Thanksgiving turkeys because, you know, I don't want to get stuck with product that I can't move. I want it out of my freezer, like, as soon as possible.
Right. Yep, I've ran into that too. Unfortunately, learned a few things the hard way already with had someone want a whole goat, and so we went ahead and had one butchered, and then the deal fell through. So we ended up with a whole goat in our freezer, just taking
yeah, well, that's a perfect example, and I had that happen to me too, because so that's why if anyone wants something like that, you know, I'll do it, but I need the money. I need a significant amount of money up front. You know, I'm not afraid to ask for more than half of the final price as a deposit. You know, like the turkeys, like I'm getting $5 a pound for turkeys this year, and so $50 is half of that cost. Well, for like a 20-pound turkey, that would be about half. So.
Good advice. Todd asked me about my market demographics, and I would say mine are similar to Terry's, where it's very well educated, upper middle class type folks that are buying through the co-op. I don't do a lot of ethnic sales because I have found personally that they're looking for bargains, and what I'm producing is not a bargain. I'm selling a value product.
Ryan asked, what type of turkeys do I raise? I tried to raise chickens once, and I couldn't do it. Well, I did it, but it was a really rough project. It wasn't very successful, and so I leave the fowl to a friend of mine who does a really good job with them, and he's raising bronzes, which I don't know. I thought I would have people complain about like dark pin feathers, but I didn't. So whatever, it works. Let's see. You had a question about pricing, I believe. So when we're pricing, this is one of the reasons why we need to know our costs. The pricing obviously has to be above our cost of production, plus a comfortable margin. And when you estimate your cost of production, please, 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 please put in your labor. At least pay yourself $10 an hour, or whatever. You know, if you'd only get $8 an hour at your job in town, put $8 an hour. But don't work for free, because I don't want to work for free. I believe that my time is worth something, and then you should have a margin, 4%, 16%, I don't know, whatever you're comfortable with. So I think above 4% should be good, because I think that's about what the average is for farms in general. And then the other thing is, like, if you're, putting, inflation, putting money in the bank, what would you earn, for your opportunity costs? Anyways, so we must know our cost of production. And not only that, if you don't know your cost of production and you're setting your price $1 a pound, $2 a pound, less than the other farmer, you're making it harder for that other farmer. It's not very neighborly. So I asked what other farmers were charging. I go, especially with the veal, when I started doing that, I've found out what other farmers were charging. I looked in the grocery store and thought about the differences. For example, hot dogs, all beef hot dogs in our area were $9 a pound last time I checked, which was about 2 months ago. So I know that nobody can complain about my price for hot dogs. I have the same price as what the grocery stores, and my product is way better. So I don't know. Does that do you have any questions about that, Cheryl? Or
that was really helpful. So you're shooting for at least
a 4% and that's after
margin.
labor. So and this way, you're hopefully being able to put that back into the business and improve the business. Make your systems better, your facilities better, pay down debt. I don't know, different things. There's a lot of things that we can do with that margin. So,
Yeah, I think the labor is a key thing there too, because it seems like a lot of people don't.
And you should, because your time is worth something. So, processing. In Massachusetts right now, we have to have our animals processed at a USDA inspected facility in order to sell at retail. We have 2 facilities in the state. I usually don't go to either one. I usually go to Rhode Island or New Hampshire, just based on what I want, what product I want. Like if I want ground beef, I'm more likely to go to New Hampshire. If I'm doing veal, it's cheaper for me to go to Rhode Island, and they do a really nice job. Different facilities, I always get everything cryovac. The place in New Hampshire has a nicer cryovac machine, but they don't weigh it. So in Rhode Island, they weigh everything. And then Ryan had asked, how do I track my labor? Do I estimate, keep a log, etc.? When I first started, I didn't need to really estimate or keep a log, because it was any time I was awake, I was working on the farm. So anyway, so that's I don't know. Yeah, you should estimate or keep a log. One of the others. Your average weekly labor. Liability insurance was required for us. I don't know why anyone wouldn't have liability insurance. At least in Massachusetts, I mean, if someone goes onto your farm and slips on some cow poop, you might have a lot of problems. I don't know.
We really encourage all the co-op members to have liability insurance too. Did you have trouble finding company that would insure someone
Not
who's
so
doing
much the direct sales, the raw milk. It has become an issue. At first, they said no insurance, and I was like, okay, I can deal with that. You know, and then they said, okay, we'll insure you. And then they said, after a couple of years, they're like, we changed our mind. So we have an LLC, which provides some protections. But for the direct sales, we didn't have any problem. We used Farm Family Insurance, which is they have an agreement with Farm Bureau in Massachusetts. And I don't know I know it's a state to state, like not every state uses Farm Family, and I don't know if it's national or something, but I would think that I'd be surprised if a farm, regular farm insurance wouldn't want to do local. So I guess Jay says State Farm will do it, but in New Hampshire I use LeMays. One of the questions is who do I use? I use LeMays. And we're trying to get that law changed with the Farm Bureau is trying to help us make it so that we can use state-inspected facilities for retail sales, which would help a lot because it would make the drive to the slaughterhouse much shorter, and also the competition would help the quality to improve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here in Iowa, as long as you can use a state-inspected facility for intra-state sales, so sales within the state of Iowa. And what USDA inspected allows you to sell across state lines as well. So, and there aren't too many USDA inspected facilities in Iowa that I'm aware of, but I happen to be close to one, so we do use the USDA inspected facility because of their pricing and stuff is very competitive as far as processing fees. They're a big facility, or a larger facility, so they're easy to get into. They've got the capacity, and we also we went and taste tested a lot of their products, and we really liked the flavors and stuff of like their hot dogs and bratwurst and stuff like that. So I guess we thought, well, if we thought it tasted good, hopefully
one of the big things for us was the cryovac, because it's much harder to sell paper wrapped meat than cryovac meat. So you had asked about time management, and unfortunately I'm probably not a good one to talk about time management. This is my son Joseph, and adding direct marketing is adding a full-time job on the farm. It's a lot of work. We milk 24 cows. We have 14 part-time employees and 2 full-time employees. And then I also have an accountant, a heifer raiser, a consultant, and a publicity person. So we joke that we're on a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 cows for every person. But it's intense. It's a lot. And once you start adding employees, which is the only way that we found to make it any easier, it's like adding a whole new can of worms. I don't know if you can notice on this picture here, I have on our refrigerator notes that I've written to try to make things run a little bit smoother, and sometimes it doesn't work. Communication is so important and so complicated and difficult sometimes. Even when you think it should be simple, it's not always easy. So for record keeping and financing, Cheryl, that's the other thing that we talked about. I got connected with Farm Credit, and I'm not exactly sure what the corresponding if you guys have Farm Credit, if it goes by that name out there. I ended up having them do my record keeping after about a year and a half because I was getting so busy and I didn't really like keeping track of things with, you know, my receipts and whatever. And even though I knew it was important. And so they offered this wonderful service where I just mail in my receipts and they do all the rest and then send me reports about my profitability, which I loved. And they're who I used as a lending. They have a beginning farmer program, at least in the Northeast. They have the Farm Start program, which is a very good program they have for young farmers where they'll do lines of credit. And I'm not exactly sure what the cap was. I think I know mine was like $35,000 that they gave me for operating expenses, and I didn't really use it very much, and that's why the reason why I needed it was because my prices were set wrong at the beginning. My first year they weren't set right, and I had talked to another farmer to find out what they thought their cost of production was, and it ended up being about $2 per gallon less than what mine ended up being, and so I had to increase my prices, and then I needed to expand, and at the same time I didn't have enough money to expand, so that's why I went to Farm Credit. Farm Service Agency also has great loan rates, but they have a lot of paperwork, and yeah, Ellen says some banks in rural Iowa will do loans. Now, I don't have, like, our local banks won't lend to a farm because they're too risky. So my goal for the farm was to have a balanced budget and to hold a 3-month reserve. And what I mean by a balanced budget is that I would be able to lend to myself so that the receipts from my peak periods would be enough to cover my low periods so that I ideally wouldn't need to borrow. Anyways. Yeah, I would recommend. I mean, the Farm Credit, it cost me about $100 a month, but it was worth it to know to have that information up to date and at my fingertips, so that I could, get a report about, what my cost per bottle is, what my average sale is, On average, every customer, when they stop at the farm, they're going to spend $24. So if I have a roast that I want to get $50 for, I know that that's going to be a harder sale. And so then I can make my packages smaller. So if my average sale is $24, I want to keep most of my packages of meat below that price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So that way it's easier to sell the stuff. Each piece of meat, it's easier to sell. Then I think this is this is my last slide. Did you have anything else, Cheryl, that you wanted to bring up or anything like that?
I think you've done a great job covering it, Terry.
Okay. You had asked about. I'm sorry. You had asked about burnout, and I don't have a good solution for that. I think I probably got burnt out, and then I just kept going. And it went away. I don't know. I think, I love cows. I just love them so much that it was fun for me. Like, I didn't feel like I was working. I never felt like I was working, when I'm in the barn. Cheryl, do you use Equip?
Yes. We've started developing a program with our local Equip guy through our county office. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Yeah. So we're putting a whole plan on how to lay out the pastures and do the rotation and get watering lines put in, and yeah. They've been really helpful with some ideas for us.
Yeah. And I know we're closing in on our time, and I don't know if anyone else has any questions. You know, I think that direct marketing can revive a farm. It can enhance financial sustainability, but it also can just be more work for the same amount of profit or loss. And I think you need to really think hard about how to work smarter, and like I said, really be in the beginning about really being honest with yourself, that if you are willing to take the time to, you know, answer what seems like really silly questions to us, but other people really don't know, and unfortunately there's a lot of misinformation out there about farmers, about why we do different things that we do, and if we're out there selling our product directly to people, we're going to have to be prepared to answer those questions, and hopefully to answer them thoughtfully and honestly, without saying anything that would hurt another farmer. You know, I think it's really important that we're honest when we talk about different things, and you know, there's a lot of controversial stuff out there right now, and a lot of that's because, you know, there are people are so far removed from farms, and it's unfortunate. So, but again, you know, we can do it if we know our cost of production. We have to know our cost of marketing, and we have to do a business plan and do it again every year. And I can't tell you how many times doing a business plan really helped, or really helped me refine what I wanted to do, and then also having the mission and vision helped me make decisions about where we wanted to go next. So I don't know.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah, go ahead, Luke. I think we're...
Thank you. Just, I know there's time for one more question or so, but I wanted to say thank you very much for coming, and thank you to our funders, the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture, Grant 2010-4940-2183, 21843, USDA Risk Management Agency, USDA Special Crops Block Grant Program, with Idaho Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, Cedar Tree Foundation, Agricultural Alliance, John Deere, and Cliff Bar all gave generously to make sure that we could do these kind of programming. And I had to say that, or else I was going to lose my job.
Well, thanks for the great Farminar, and Cheryl, I really appreciated all our conversations and getting ready for this, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with y'all.
Well, big thanks to you, Terry. I'm going to take all this information and put it into my...
Yeah, and if you have any more questions or anything, feel free to email me, and anyone in the audience can too. And my website was earlier on at terrilawton.wordpress.com. Someday it's going to be terrilawton.com. It's not quite there yet. Thank you, Luke.
And please join us next week for a new farm. We're going to switch gears to a new enterprise, talking about growing in high tunnels for fruit and vegetable producers. And that'll be with Paul and Allison Wiedeger from Kentucky, and also beginning farmer Sarah Hansen from north central Iowa. Thank you, Terry, and thank you, Cheryl, for your wonderful presentations tonight, and thank you for the great participation from the audience. See you next week.